Spiritual experiences are accidental, and spiritual practices make us more accident prone. So the more that I practice spirituality, do these practices, the more I'm going to have these spiritual experiences. And I've had so many of them now. It's pretty unbelievable.
Hi, everybody. Pat McCarthy here. Welcome to our podcast. I'm sitting here with some close friends and colleagues that many of you may know, and we'll be discussing wellness. We'll be discussing recovery. We'll be discussing different parts of the journey to substance-free. What do you want to call it, Thuan? What's this journey we're on?
Life?
Life. There you go.
Reclaiming our lives.
So one of the things, maybe we'll kick it off to discussion with, is about spirituality and early recovery. Sometimes that kind of scares people off. What do you guys got with that?
Hit it, Ricky.
Hey, I'm Ricky, 7-year employee here at Mountainside, and my journey began, didn't come looking for any spirituality or anything like that. It was just something that I felt a disconnection from just the people around me, just from society, and just from like anything that was of any value, you know. And I think I got hooked up with the right group of people that just said I needed this to get me into this way of living that's happy, joyous, it's purposeful, and little by little, I was just guided to a more a spiritual way of living. I grew up in a church, so I kind of had them confused because I thought I had this, idea of God that I was afraid of, but I got hooked up with the right group of people, and they said, just build your own higher power, which is just something like the world of recovery allowed me to just have faith in, like, if not anything else, but just my journey into recovery. And so I used that as my higher power for a long time until, this GOD thing came into place. And it's a process for us that, for me specifically, that I just had to practice day by day by day. And the more I became less obsessed with my old way of living, this new manner just started to take place, and it was just a more purposeful and fulfilling, and that was how I came into this world of spirituality. I was taught religion, but they told me about spirituality being this individual journey into believing in something just a little greater than myself, It's got me here today.
I think a lot of people tie religion and spirituality like two strings of yarn, and they tie it up in a big knot like it's together, but it can be, but it definitely is two separate things if it needs to be for a lot of people.
Yeah.
What do you guys got on that?
Yeah, I remember when I read the steps for the first time, and there's this higher power, God all over it, and I was like, there is no way I'm going to be able to stay sober if I have to believe in a God. And I was just like, well, I'm going to have to use my willpower, my intelligence, because that got me through so many difficult moments of my life. And then when I went to a step 2 meeting, and I read in the 12 and 12, it said that you can substitute people as a higher power. I was like, I am going to grab onto that as much as I can, because at least there's a group of people who know how to get clean and sober. And all I have to do is check my ego at the door and just listen. And when I started listening and people asked me or suggested that I start doing things like praying and meditating, I was like, you know what? My life is really bad right now. Why don't I just give it a shot? And I remember I was working at the second step with my sponsor, and he said, he asked me if I was praying. And I was like, you know what? I don't believe in God. I don't think God is going to be a part of my program. And I was railing on God for about 10 minutes. And then he stopped me and said, I didn't ask you whether or not you believed in God. I asked you if you prayed. I was like, wait, what's the difference? He said, just talk to the universe, see what happens. And I remember going to a second step meeting, and somebody said, my first prayer was just simply, can you give me the strength and courage to stay away from drink and drug today? And I thought that was a cool prayer, so I just said it. I didn't address it to anybody, just said the words. And after about 90 days, the obsession was lifted from me. And now I don't know if it was the prayer. I don't know if it's because I was going to meetings and just hang out with sober people, but something good was happening. So I just kept on doing it. And for me, it's just having the willingness to try some of these spiritual practices to see whether or not it can help me in my life. And I remember reading something that spiritual experiences are accidental, and spiritual practices make us more accident prone. So the more that I practice spirituality, do these practices, the more I'm going to have these spiritual experiences. And I've had so many of them now. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, I had a similar experience to Thuan. Not shocking, because we're twins. But I had a similar experience to Thuan in that when the first time I read the steps, I was like, there's no way I can't believe in God, because I was stuck in like that self-pity mindset where I was like, all these bad things wouldn't have happened to me, like if there was a God around. And I let that keep me separate for a long time. But eventually, I kept trying to do it my way and operate on self-will, and every time I try to operate on self-will, whether I'm using or sober, I drive myself right into the ground. And so eventually I got desperate enough because someone told me that my obsession would be lifted, my obsession to use and drink would be lifted if I prayed, and I was like, you're full of it. You're lying to me. That is too good to be true. But eventually I tried that, and I started getting on my knees to pray every morning and every night, not knowing what I was praying to or having really any idea what that looked like. I was just so desperate. And after a couple weeks, I didn't want to use anymore. Like, I just noticed that constant obsession in my head, it was just quiet, finally. And after that, like, I knew there was something to this, and I knew that there was something bigger for me. I think I didn't want to believe in a higher power or have any sense of spirituality, because that meant I had to be more than what I was now. Like, if I didn't believe that there was something bigger out there, if there wasn't something bigger out there, I didn't have to be any more than like an alcoholic or like a mess up or whatever I used to label myself. I could just stay as I was. And it was sometimes scarier to believe I could be bigger than myself or could be better. But yeah, it's changed my life. And like you said, it's an active practice.
Yeah. It's amazing when you talk to a lot of people in recovery, including myself, like all of you guys described an experience of having a prefixed idea about how something was, taking actions that you don't really believe in, and having a new experience as a result of those actions. And I mean, it's kind of weird to sit here and piggyback after three people, but I totally could. Now I am. No. And it's kind of funny because, like, my sponsor, the person, you know, the people that I had seen that gotten sober had all taken actions that I had been unwilling to take for a long time. And once I was willing to do that because of the desperation of my life and my addiction, my sponsor said, I want to know how you feel after you do this stuff. The way you feel now, I get it. That's not helping you. He says, if you're willing to do certain things, why don't you just take a chance? What do you got to lose? And one of the things I remember, I was here washing dishes in the old kitchen at Mountainside, and Bob Dylan came on the radio and the song Like a Rolling Stone, and I cranked it up, and I was sober like a couple of weeks, and in the song he says, when you got nothing to lose. I don't like the biggest Dylan fan, but I like him. But that line changed my whole demeanor. What do I have to lose right now to do this stuff? And I kind of kicked and screamed, but did it.
Yeah.
You know, and my experience is like, thank God I was wrong about myself, about all of you, and about the universe. Because if I was right, I would have been in big trouble. And if I didn't follow suggestions of people that wanted to help me for no better reason but just to help me. They had no interest in it besides helping another human being. And it just made so much sense after I did it. You know? So, what else you guys got? How about some early recovery difficulties when you're first coming into this thing, like reactions with family, coming and going in society? I remember cashing a paycheck the first time sober. Let me tell you something. I'd never done that, even as a paper boy. Yeah. I was like, this is my eighth of weed money. You know, the first time I cashed a paycheck, I think I ran like the Flash back to the McCall house. I got it. Or even reactions with family, you know.
Yeah.
How was it for you, Ricky?
Oh, my family they were definitely on board. They still were very triggering, you know, because they were asking me to do like responsible things around the house still, you know, that I had avoided. Can you take the garbage, throw a load of laundry? And I'm like, you know, and usually what would happen was that I was in flight mode. You know, I'd just go out and So my old solution was, yeah, I'll get it later, not to go get drunk. But so as I started this journey into recovery, which my step 2 experience was, here is hundreds of people who've solved their drink problem. They're going back to their families and their jobs. And so I remember the first time my aunt, I lived with her, and she asked me, can you? And I didn't fight her, I mean, like she was looking to get a rise out of me. I know her, and so what I did was, like, I said, okay, I got it. And I could see the look on her face. It was a little bit of like, damn.
It was like an honor to do it for you.
She thought like I was going to fight her. I was going to go drink again. But I said, I'll take care of it. And not like later on. I went and did it right then. And so that started to rebuild our relationship with her. My mom is in Arkansas, and so it took a couple of years before I got to go see her as a sober man, as her son, But my aunt had been feeding her details about, he's doing good. He's not drinking anymore. He's not coming in at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. He's going to work. He gave me money for food. I remember when I get my first check, and I went home with my check. She was
shocking for an alcoholic to do that.
Because I'd lived with her for probably 8 or 10 years, and it's weed money, man. It's drinking money, and so when I said, hey, you need some help with something, and that was a feeling for me that I wanted more of that, just being a contributor to the household. Because before I'd just been a thief, I stole her peace of mind. I took money from her, and to be able to go back and just give something to her. And then her son and daughter lived there. They were my party buddies. And so instead of going upstairs, I hung out with her and watched the Mets. She loved the Mets, so that's how I started to rebuild my family relations. They didn't come along with me, all of them. She didn't either, but this was just over time to where we were just like, we were buddies again. She was my aunt. I live in her house, so I have to do the responsible thing. I won't be in at 10 o'clock. I'm going to go to a meeting, and this is what I'm going to do. No pushing from anybody. They were happy that he was getting sober because, like, we don't need this knucklehead Ricky around here no more, And I was a knucklehead, and I was always drunk, And so once I started to get sober, so I thank God for, like, the step 2 part, like all of those people that just said, look what we're doing. Give us a shot, I fell in love with it. That's how I restored my family relations, just by doing what I was supposed to do.
Is that how you came to love the Mets?
Or was
that beforehand?
I'd always liked the Mets.
Okay.
Did that lead to
Just
drinking
checking.
the Mets?
Yeah.
I drank over them for a lot of years. But
What say you, Isabel?
What say you?
Well, my relationship with my family was challenging, to say the least, when I first got sober. I actually pointed my mom towards Al-Anon, which she really didn't like, because it's always like, you're the alcoholic, like you're the one with the problem. But she's still in Al-Anon now. She has a home group that she goes to, and I actually heard her speak at an Al-Anon meeting on Saturday, and that's like, if you want to get humbled fast, you go there to listen to that.
It's a bold move for an alcoholic to send their loved one to Al-Anon. Wow.
Yeah, it was. It was aggressive, but the biggest barometer for my sobriety was how I was doing with my relationship with my sister, because she didn't want to see me really at all for the first 7 months I was sober. And I knew we were doing better because she would start opening up to me more the longer I stayed sober and the more I got out of self. I stopped making everything about me, because realistically I took this kid's childhood from her, my little sister, because all of the attention went to me, what problems I was having, what was going on with me, what can we do for Isabel, and she just kind of had to fall in line and not cause issues for our parents. So she had written her college essay about me, and I wanted to read it, and I was asking, let me see, it's about me, I want to know. And she would just shut me down and be like, no, I'm not letting you read it. I'm not letting you read it. And then one day I woke up in my sober house around 7 months sober, and I had it all on my phone. And I remember just reading it and crying and feeling so hurt, but I knew the recovery had really become it was underway for me, because I didn't get angry and I didn't deny it. I just it was fair. I knew that it was fair what she said, and I took ownership in that. And I made amends to her shortly after, And that was one of the most impactful things. And really making amends to my family was where I was able to lay it all out, because it was no longer me. It was no longer me being like, well, I'm in pain, like I'm doing all of these things, so it's okay. It was me owning up to what I did and not apologizing, but just like taking accountability for that. Like, I did these things, and what can I do to make it right? Like, I've caused these harms, and just really sitting with that, where I would deflect them for so long or deny them for so long. It was incredibly profound. And now I have a great relationship with my family. Like, my sister's my maid of honor for my wedding. And like I said, I went and saw my mom speak at an Al-Anon meeting. We have to be on good terms, like, for something like that.
Well, it's like, we're not responsible for having the disease, having the illness, having alcoholism, but we are responsible for the behavior that goes on with that.
Yeah.
You know? And we're also responsible for the recovery. We're not responsible for having it, but you have to clean up the mess that it made, because that's your life, you know? And that's one of the things, like, you know, the practice that most of us do requires to go back in and heal those relationships and get even par with people, you know, that you feel that you've done some harm in their life. Yeah, it's beautiful. There's a saying in recovery that the truth is the only thing that will set you free, but it will not always give you a nice day.
Yeah.
But the truth is the truth. If you want to be free, you have to get through the truth, you know. What's going on with you, young man?
What's going on with me?
Do tell.
Family. Such an interesting topic. Yeah. I think the best thing that my family did for me in my recovery was just hands off. They didn't do anything. All they did was they loved and supported me. And full disclosure, Pat picked me up at rehab. And
at 30 days clean, wait?
21 days.
Oh, I've never done it.
I did a 3-day week.
I thought they told me 30. Kidding.
Reduce length of stay.
And what happened was Pat introduced me to all his friends. And I had a really good network, and they were the ones that really guided me through my recovery. And the better that I got in my recovery, the better that my relationship with my family got. And so my recovery was on one side, my family was on the other side, and every time that I went home and saw them, my relationship started getting better and better. And it's so interesting because there are some moments when I know that I could have taken advantage of them not knowing about recovery, because there were moments when my family would like offer me alcohol. No, they knew that I was definitely a drug addict, but they didn't know I was an alcoholic. There's some moments that I was like, no. And then I would just like decline. And it's not their responsibility to know. It's my responsibility to know. And because I was being honest, I knew that I needed to act this way and behave this way. And the interesting thing is when I did my 9th step with my family, that was huge for me, because it was one of the steps that I told myself I would not do. And when I did it, I remember my mom at the dinner table, and I had done it with my dad and my mom. And at the end, all she said was, "We just liked you to visit us once in a while." That's all they wanted, to me, be a part of the family again. And for the 8 years that I was in Seattle in active addiction, like the biggest harm that I did to my family was I wasn't present. And so for me, like the amends was whenever there was a family reunion or something, I was going to be there. So yeah, recovery has really rebuilt my relationships with not only my family, but with myself and other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how if a person has alcoholism, it definitely infects the people around them. And when it comes to family, especially like the more love there is for the person, the more of an infection it becomes. Because most of myself, I thought, well, I'm not harming anybody. And I remember I was way upstate New York one time in a treatment center, and it was 5 years before I got sober. And my parents came to visit me, and I remember I was looking out the window, and it was a big old farmhouse. They were like, if you want to leave, there's nobody for like 30 miles. So, you know, it was a nice place. And when they got out of the car, I almost started crying, because I was like, the last time I thought I looked at them, I was 12 years old. And here I was 28 years old, and they had aged, and I missed it. I couldn't believe how old my mom looked and my dad looked. They looked tired, you know, and maybe it was because they were visiting their son in treatment, you know, and I didn't get sober that time, but I remember having this moment of like, Mike, where have you been? Since, in my mind, they didn't look like that. But I was forced into abstinence being there, and I got to look at them, and it was like, ugh, you know. But one of the most significant things for myself, I was visiting my parents in the Catskills because I got sober in Connecticut, and our relationship started healing, and I was like invited back, you know, around a year sober to go visit for the weekend, and I remember I saw my mother take her bag out of the room we were in and put it into the bedroom when she left the room. And now, listen, full disclosure, that might be her practice on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with this untreated alcoholic who's been dry a while, that's about me.
No, that's when my parents started leaving the change jar out. I knew I was doing well.
And I called my sponsor and I said, you know I got 10 months sober. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Did you know what my mother just did? And he was like, what? I said, you took her bag, brought it in the room. I'm sober, damn it. And he said, how dare you judge her like that? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, whatever that was, you brought that to the relationship, not her. He goes, you need to love her. Are you sober? Go love her if you're a sober son. He goes, the fact that she feels that she still needs to do that, if that's what she did, he's like, she must be very hurt from what you did in your drinking. She must love you a lot to be that hurt. And I was like, that's the last time I'm calling him at a situation like this. But the truth is, when she started leaving the bag there, or telling me they were going away, I didn't even notice it. Yeah. You know, it just, I let her do what she needed to do to heal. And like Thuan said, just to show up, you know?
Yeah. They know you're coming.
Yeah.
Ricky's here. And it's not with that, oh shit, Ricky's here. You know, it's like, Ricky! It used to be like, oh, Ricky. You know, so.
Yeah. You thought your name had a, oh shit, attached to it. Well, I gotta say, the cool thing about this podcast and this section of what we're doing here is the four of us here have like an amazing connection and relationship outside of this sitting right here. Like I have a history, we all have histories with each other.
Except for Thuan and I.
Yeah, no, it's not a really,
These
it's not really
guys
good
enter
at all.
into epic battles that are staged, but I believe that there's some real resentment involved.
Yeah.
And tune in for our next episode of Balancing Recovery and Family. And Ricky's hair will be even better next time.
Coming soon.